Hi, it's Melinda. How are you doing from Hope When There Was None? Thank you for joining us. I'm so excited I have Wendy here with me. This lady is just amazing and so inspiring. And I kind of cooked this thing up like spur of the moment. And I'm so grateful that you could join me and we're on board with my crazy idea of having you on, like I said, last minute. Thank you. Thank you. All right, so this is my page, Hope When There Was None. I started this not too long ago, back 2 years ago. It's a page to help those that are maybe in toxic relationships, struggling with emotional, mental issues, whatever the gamut is, this is a page for you. We like to share different information. I also have a closed group. I am a domestic violence survivor and also a childhood abuse survivor too. And we reach out with other survivors. We have experts, whether it be health experts, counselors, those that just need to share their story to inspire others. So I have Wendy here with me today, and also a little bit in the broadcast I am going to be doing, and she's going to pick a lucky winner of my books. I wrote my story, Call Me Master, and also Rising from the Ashes, How I Healed My PTSD. So I'm going to be giving those away a little bit later. So Miss Wendy, my goodness, thank you. Thank you.
Glad to be here.
Yes, thank you so very much. And let's see, I'm going to give you your banner here with all of these wonderful things that you are. I don't know where to start. I don't know if we should start the health or where would you like to go? A little bit of your story and how you got into that health.
Yeah, well, I mean, when I look at that too, it looks like a lot of things, but really that's over 15 years. So it was like one at a time slowly, right?
Oh, right.
And because I am 60, I'm kind of past. I mean, I wish I could actually, if I could go back to school and get a big degree, I just would pass on that, loan to somebody after I die because I would never pay it off. So I've been getting these, these things that I've done in the field that I'm in, which is alternative health. I've just sort of added into the areas that I specialize in. And what they mean is, I'll tell everybody.
I forgot to put my battery in. Hold on. Hold on. Let me feel around because I don't think you want me to put my chest up there. So yes, go ahead. Keep going.
Okay. So the first one, the CNC, I'm a clinical nutritionist. The second one, an FDN, is a functional diagnostic nutritionist. That means I can actually use lab work and I can send in, for instance, saliva to check adrenal glands and the sex hormones, etc. NBCCT is a national board certified colon therapist. So I do colonics in my clinic. And just this last year, I got certified as a health coach. And health coach is kind of cool because what we'd really love to do is get that paradigm changed with MDs. So that if you went to an MD who said, oh, you have type 2 diabetes, you need to change your diet. And he kind of leaves you there and you walk home that day thinking, I got to change my diet. The health coach person would be there to say, this is how we can do it, right? And they would walk you through it and spend the time with you, basically coaching you in it, rather than you in this vague place of having to change your diet and not really knowing what you're doing. So health coaches do come alongside doctors. We also come alongside just people. And it doesn't have to only be about nutrition. You could just need to do something in your life and you'd like to have a plan. And the whole idea of a health coach is to put the plan together and then work through that plan in increments, however long it takes. And a health coach kind of holds people accountable to their own goals. I'm not telling them what to do. They have the goals and I'm helping them accomplish their desires.
That is awesome. But you just didn't spring into this out of the blue. There's a reason you got involved. So why don't you tell us how you got involved in that?
Well, many years ago, I was actually raised in Canada. And then I last 6 years, I've been in Southern California. But before I married my abusive husband, I was a paralegal sort of thing. In those old days, though, they trained you to be a paralegal. So the firm trained me. So when I came out of the marriage in 2004, I had this thought, do I want to go back into that? But I knew I would have to go back to school anyway. So as a kid, just as a person, I was always interested in health. I always was. So that was always an interest regardless. But so you and I talked the other day, and I don't know which place we would really want to go here, but I was raised in an abusive home. So my father was a raging alcoholic who, I will say I didn't have any sexual abuse, but I was beaten. And we all, 6 of us, we were all pretty much beaten and screamed at and thrown around almost every day. My mother, I used to think my poor mother, but I came years later to realize that my mother was her side of the dance. So my mother was completely unemotional and unattachable. You couldn't reach her. My mom was very distant. I don't even think in my whole entire life I was ever hugged by my mother, even when I was a child. Actually, when she had Alzheimer's at the very, very end, she actually kissed me one day on my cheek, just like a little child. And I had to run to the bathroom and sit in there and cry because I couldn't believe that I actually got kissed by my mother. Well, so my mother was very cold.
How does that affected you going forward? Since where you were, I mean, are you a hugger? Are you like, if anybody goes to hug you, does you freak out or no?
Yeah, well, once I'm so healed from so many things like you, PTSD and everything, that I don't think about it now, and I am very I'm effusive that way. But when I was a kid, I was one of 6 kids, and all I know is I didn't fit in. I think all the people listening, and you included, we can all say that usually within these types of families, you feel like you kind of feel like you don't fit in anywhere, right? I mean, that's the whole thing. So I was a really sensitive kid, and that expression, HSP, the highly sensitive person, obviously was me, and I'm sure a lot of us are. I don't think I'm alone in that. And I was conscious of everything. I was conscious of what was going on in my family, but I didn't know. I just, as we all do, I blame myself. And when you have parents who are that dysfunctional and they project onto the children, I believed what was told me, right? And because I was always the kid trying to figure out what was going on and trying to fix everything, I was really gaslighted as being, you're too much, you're a problem. Why do you always do that? So in answer to that question, I was a very warm child originally. I think I was warm. Nowadays, and I think we can all do this. The first time I ever did it in my recovery, when I would stand in the mirror and say to myself, Wendy, you were a really, really sweet girl and you were a good girl. First time I ever did it, I bawled for 2 days, couldn't stop crying. And I was the one who told it to me, right? Because I never believed I was. I just thought I was a problem. And I think when you think you're a problem, it sets you up, right? Right. So, and no matter how I tried with my mom, I really always tried to get close to her. Even as a small child, I never could. I just never could. Plus, everybody plays a role in a dysfunctional family and probably even in healthy families. But in this one, they would roll their eyes and just be like, that's Wendy. Like that was always me, always me. And it's not even, I don't even look at it now because now I'm kind of over it, but I haven't seen them all in many years anyway. But I think it set me up. And so later in life, I was really, really, I don't want to say codependent. We talked about that before. I don't like that expression, but I'll say I was self-love deficient, couldn't love myself. So obviously I was always trying to give love to everyone else and help people, but I didn't love myself. And I was actually pretty set up pretty perfectly for my ex-husband to walk right into the wings, right?
Yes, ma'am. Arms wide open.
Do that.
Yes.
But anyway, I had no self-confidence. So if you look at everything I'm doing today and you look at that on there, I had no goals for my life. When you've come out of abuse, really you're in survival.
Yes.
I was living people that have lived like this know what I say when I say you're always waiting for the other shoe to drop. Always. If things are going good, no matter what's happening in life, you're always hyper vigilant. You're always aware of everybody in the room. You're always aware of everything going on. Everything is, intense. And so my life was filled with drama in those days. That's all I knew. I mean, when you live in drama and then you meet other people in drama, that's your normal. Yeah. And so, in a little bit, we could talk a little bit about the adrenal glands and the health aspects, but just from my side of it. And then I got very sickly as a kid, like really sick. I ended up at 6 years old in the hospital, and I was in there for 4 months on penicillin drip. And they put me in a body cast from here to my ankles because I had something called osteomyelitis. I now believe I got polio actually from the polio sugar cube we all took in 1963 or whatever it was. Mm-hmm. So I was in the hospital that long because they really didn't know what was wrong with me. And my left leg was, I couldn't walk on it. And I was such an active kid that they put me in a body cast to keep me immobile because I was just too active. And I mean, what's interesting in all therapy and stuff I've done, I can never remember. I was in there 4 months, can't remember a thing.
Wow.
And my therapist says, well, I think you blocked that out. My parents were probably just glad not to have another kid in the house because nobody came really to see me. I had an aunt and uncle that came a few times that I really remember for their love that they showed me. But yeah, again, I was the problem. And I think even as a kid, I was thinking I'm such a problem. And now I'm in the hospital That's even more of a problem, right?
Oh.
Yeah, that. But hey, I wasn't alone. I had 5 siblings, and every one of us we all got abused in the different ways we all got it. You know, it was just all sad. I look back now, my dad died at 56 from alcoholism. I mean, so sad. Like, I realize I'm older than he even got to be, right? And my mom ended up with dementia for her last 12, 15 years of her life. Just 2 really disconnected people. They were completely disconnected. They were in what they were in. I mean, I don't know how all of us little children didn't touch their hearts in some way. I don't know. So that's heartbreaking. But anyway, and and I always felt presence of God. I just want to say this, even as a kid, I didn't really know God or anything, but I always felt like he was there. Like, it was weird. I always believed in him. Yes, and then, so anyway, I got in my teen years. My parents got divorced when I was 17, and my dad was living with already some other ladies. He always was throughout the marriage. And so at 17, I became extremely promiscuous. I was just out there, right? Yeah, I made up.
Me too. That was me too.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I know, but it felt good,
It did, and it's weirdness, right?
Yeah, I
would love to say that I was totally an independent woman when I did it, but I was really looking to be rescued. So I really, in a way, even in my promiscuity, I stayed in the realm of needing rescuing, right? I mean, I wasn't out there being self-sufficient and doing my, making my life happen. Yeah. I'm being promiscuous, but I'm so lost, right? And I was such a good setup for another guy to sort of walk. He was in the wings, right? Because I was just there I was. Anyway, so I met my ex-husband when I was about 20. I think I was 22 when I met him. And, as everybody knows, I mean, I now believe that my ex-husband he's still alive, a sociopath. I did not know he had a sealed juvie record. Nobody told me when I met him, and actually I met him in church, and nobody ever told me. There was a lot of things I found out later, but he was an antisocial kid. I mean, it was all from the beginning happening with him. And his family was so religious. His parents were so highly involved and so respected in the community. I just think they didn't know what to do with him, right? And in his small town that they were in, he was using drugs. They were stealing. They were just, in those days in the 70s, that would have been called incorrigible. Do you remember that word? That's what he was called, incorrigible. And he had a record and everything. So I think when he was something like 13 and he didn't want to obey any of their rules and he had some girlfriend already, there was a kind of a mutual agreement. He wanted to live with her family, and his family were like, we can't deal with this boy. So the family of the girlfriend, they were a foster family to him. And so he was gone from 13 to 19. Now, I didn't find all this out till many years later. He was gone from 13 to 19. Well, I met him when he was 22 or 3, and he had come back on the scene. It took me years to find out because, later when I understood what was all really happened, I asked them all. When he turned up on the scene again, when he was 19 and he just appeared, did you guys ever ask him any questions? Like, well, no, we were so amazed he was back and he had cut his hair and he was wearing a suit and he just looked so great. Boom. Like, what do you know about these types of people, right?
Right.
So he just turned up. Everybody was overjoyed. Everybody was crying. And he's back home. And there he was, right? And so I came along, a little sacrificial lamb. And, as is always the case, at least, I don't know if everybody else has the same story, but I always feel like when you don't know you don't even know yourself yet, and you meet these people, there's this weird draw that we get to them. Have you ever talked about that? It is kind of an odd thing. It's this weird thing. You're just sort of pulled in. And I just remember that. I remember that sense of almost this mystique and this very, very charming man, very warm. And first time I ever met him, he just gave me this bear hug, and we were with a lot of people, and he was just so friendly. And I was like, oh my goodness, who is this guy, right? Yeah, all of that. He was everything in a bag of chips. I was really so insecure and so desperate for somebody to love me, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And as usual, I mean, I do want to say this. I do believe they do know what they're doing on lots of levels, even though at those days he was a lot younger, because we met and were engaged at the 5-month period, and we were married at 7 months.
Wow.
And had I waited and had I known about any of the things we know about today, Even I've read counseling books that have said 2 years, 2 years, I married him in 7 months, and had I waited even a full year, I probably would have started seeing things, right?
Wow.
But so from the second we got married, I mean, I don't know how much to even tell everybody, but from the second, he never wanted, in that 7 months, he never kissed me, touched me, held my hand, nothing, and said, this is just, we just want to do it the right way. And I thought this man was such a wonderful Christian man or whatever, that, this guy was that noble. This is how noble he was, right?
Right.
He was trying to get in my pants and all the stuff guys do. So I look back now, and there was huge red flags like that. So when we got married, I'm thinking, here we go. This is going to be, this is it. And we left that night, and we had a 3-day honeymoon that he had time off work, and he never touched me the whole time. And the whole time he told me, he said, that restaurant that we ate in on the way down, I think I got food poisoning. That's what he told me. I mean, years later, my girlfriend's like, Wendy, you were 23. It wouldn't have mattered if you were puking. You're puking, you're doing it, okay? I mean, that's how it is. I was just like, I was so, okay, it's okay. And then we got back, and he disappeared for 3 more days, and there I was. I had moved from Canada to the U.S. In those days, you had to wait to get a phone put in your wall. Remember those days?
Oh, I remember that, yes.
I didn't have a phone. I'm living, in another country, and I don't have a car. And we have this new rental home with no furniture in it, and he disappeared.
Oh my gosh.
So any normal person, when this just happened 3 days after their marriage, they probably would have gone home. I had to go home. I didn't have anybody that I trusted on the other side, right? So now I'm like, I have nowhere to go. And if anybody's looking at me right now and I look like I have my whole life together, I would tell you I was a wreck. I would just sit there and sob and cry. And because I had so much adrenal damage, which again, we can talk about a bit, and I was so, I've been in fight and flight for my entire life. When I started to go into the fear when he disappeared, I would sit, I don't know if anybody else has had this from their adrenal glands, but I would tremble. Like I would just be shaking. And I couldn't stop the shaking. This was just out of crying and fearful that he's disappeared. Where is he? So I would be in a state like that, like for hours. I mean, and that would have, knowing what I know now with health, that would have put me even further into a really, really severe state of my body releasing adrenaline, right? And and I got very, very sick, and I would go into a migraine headache. So all this is going on. He turns up 3 days later and basically just said, well, I don't need to tell you what I was doing.
Wow.
So, and somehow he lost his check. He couldn't find any money. I mean, the whole thing was a mess. So that was the beginning. And over the next, unfortunately, I got pregnant. Now, this is kind of important because it's going to play into the story. So I'm not just saying this for no reason, okay? Hi, Jill.
Hi, Jill.
So what happened is I didn't really have any sex on the honeymoon. And then when he disappeared, I didn't obviously have any. And then that following week, if we ever had it, just to be a TMI here, it would be over in 2 minutes. It would be like, this thing happened, and then it's over. So that's important because people need to know why this is going to be important. Wow. So I was kind of a bit of a good girl in my past, but I had screwed around a little bit. I told you I was promiscuous, but I still had been looking at this is my marriage. This is holy. This is great. This is going to be this amazing thing. And I couldn't figure out why that part of our life was that way. Mm-hmm. And then I got pregnant like that, from that 2-minute thing. So yeah. And so now in the thoughts of leaving him, I'm like, what am I going to do? So anyway, from that point on, I had 3 kids in a row. All through. Now, I just got to be clear about this. Dina and I never sat and talked about our feelings. We never said, I'd like to get to know you as a person. Do you like this? Do you like that? Never. Wow. Never. The charming person before I married him, and by the way, his family and all his sisters, big family, nice people, they were all nice. He charmed me, but I never saw the charm again. I never did. I had left my job, though, and I had left my country, so I wasn't working. And then I got pregnant so quick. And then he was like, you're not going to work. You're going to stay home with the kids. So that's what I just felt this was what I should do. Mm-hmm. And he would go to work. And then the drug use started. So he was using heroin, cocaine. He was shooting up, and he was doing things called speedballs, which I think were cocaine or speed and something else. Mm-hmm. I mean, this is how he was living. And I didn't know this. He was also still trying to go to work. And I have to always remind people that my husband did not look like a homeless person sitting there getting high. I mean, he was well groomed. He was a good looking man. He dressed well. So all of this was going on, and that lasted for about 6 years. In the first 6 years of our marriage, and I had 3 children. And like I said, I was pretty paralyzed emotionally because I was pretty codependent or love deficient, self-love deficient. I didn't believe in myself, and I just felt stuck, and I felt like I had nowhere to go. I couldn't go back to Canada. I couldn't go back to what I came out of, and I had really nowhere to go with this man, and he despised me. He despised me every day. It was awful. And then he became religious, and then it was, you're not a godly woman. Every night before I'd go to bed, he would sit beside the bed and he would open up the Bible and he would read on a little chair from the Bible all the ways that day and how I wasn't fulfilling my godly, how I should be. And then he would want sex, right? I mean, like.
Oh, so that was foreplay. That was foreplay for you. Gosh.
Oh yeah. But anyway, the sex was always over in 1 second, and it was never anything anyway, so it didn't even matter. But anyway, as time went on, I started getting sick. So I just want to say I do believe I had the setup also as a child because I am a practitioner. I do now know what happened to me. I think I was on antibiotics a total of almost 12 years during all those years of growing up, and then also later. So I had no microbiome. That means I had no balanced flora in my gut. I was the only child in my whole family of 6 of us to ever have to wear glasses. I was wearing them early. I had a lot, now that I work with clientele that have a really unbalanced gut, I know the emotional issues that come with that. And I didn't know that at the time. And I was that kid. And to my parents, maybe I was a problem kid. And emotionally, I was all over the place. And I had from the earliest time when I first got my period, I was covered in acne, front, back, everywhere. Nobody knew why. So they put me on more antibiotics for the acne, right? So those were the days. I think it was tetracycline. So I just stayed on them for years. And I had migraine headaches that were so debilitating, I'd be in bed for 3 and 4 days at a time. And when I was on the antibiotics, though, I was always good at sports. And I think I told you before, but I ended up being a professional athlete. So on the outward person I was, in Canada anyway. And in the 70s and 80s, it was a racquetball, the sport. And it never went anywhere. But in those days, we thought it might. Then there was no money in it, but I did a lot of tournaments. But anyway, so in those days, I'd be on the antibiotics and I could outwardly do this sport and do well. But I'd spend weekends, puking with migraine headaches. I had no confidence. And I looked like I was confident, but I wasn't. So anyway, when I had married Dean, he didn't want me to ever talk, ever about anything I ever did. I was not allowed to even say that I had played a sport or I had done well at it. So yeah. And I say sociopathic because I really draw a difference. I have met really narcissistic people, and generally speaking, it's all about them, and we all know that, but they don't have this other side that the sociopath has. And my ex-husband was very antisocial, and he was a scary guy. If you saw the Netflix special recently on Ted Bundy, I think it's still on there. If you can watch it and not be triggered and just watch it for the clear signs of the psychopath with him.
Well, see, I lived that, and a counselor told me he is exactly like him. He run the other way, girl, because he has classic signs from Ted Bundy. Yes.
And isn't that weird how, like I was saying, when you meet them, there is this weird mystique-y thing, this thing that we're pulled in, that later when we see it all, we're like, what was I thinking? Like it was so obvious, right?
Right.
But in the beginning, they do seem very charming. I mean, if you look at the pictures of Ted Bundy, he was a very, very charming man.
Right.
And on that documentary, they actually have his voice on tapes, and he's talking through actual interviews, and you can hear how he talks. And this guy he was glib. He was everything. You could go down the list of what, the things, and he was just so clearly all of them. But he kept, he broke out of 2 different jails twice. He killed people when he got out. I mean, this guy was that smooth. And my ex-husband was brilliant. It took me many years. And you guys got to understand something here. We could only go to a library, right? We didn't have the internet. We didn't have it. If you went to a therapist, do you think any of those therapists would even know about this?
No.
No way.
No.
And nobody knew. And plus, my father had been one. So I already had internalized all the things my father had said to me. So when this happened with my ex-husband, I thought, this must be me. I'm the problem, And he used that. He used every weakness that I had, really, for his own benefit. But I do want to, the reason I told you all about the sexual aspect was because I did find out as we started getting into the marriage that he had cheated. And when I confronted him with it, he didn't want to talk. He just always said the same thing. I don't want to talk about it, and we're never going to talk about it. Wow. So as a woman, I didn't think to say who could it have been a guy. I just said, who was she? Like she, right? She. Took years to realize that it was all about guys for him, which kind of explained, a little bit about why he wasn't really that interested in me even on the honeymoon, So anyway, so that went on for a lot of years. When people say, why did you stay? Why did you stay? And I think, when you run a support group like you are, anybody out there who hears this or who's listening, I mean, it's just the worst thing anybody can say.
Yeah.
If you're in that right now and you can't leave, I know that too. We both, Melinda and I, know that. You can't explain it to people unless you're in that. But I'll tell you in my story, when I was in until the final couple of years, I was with him almost 21 years. The final couple of years is when I found little boy porn on the computer. In those days, we had the big computer in the house with the tower and everything. And so we had one computer. And that's where I found it. And when the kids were all gone one day, I confronted him. And he just tried to blame it on our son. We had a son and 2 daughters. And he said, oh, it's Cody. And I said, oh, no, it's not. He's out there looking at every girl that he can see. This is not from him, right? So he even tried to throw his own son under the bus. And anyway, that was when I really knew I had to get out and I had to leave. But I had been chronically ill with fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue, lupus, and MS for probably about 12 years at the time that I wanted to leave. And I knew that if I left him, I wouldn't have any money and I would have no means to support myself. So I started on my own to research a lot about health, and I got pretty radical with my diet, and I really started to change my life. And I think that was the time I also started doing colon therapy, and that's why I offer it at my clinic, because colon therapy just radically changed me. But it was the first thing I did, and I started going to this lady, and every time I went, I felt better. And I'd come home, and I would be looking at him. And as I looked at him, my eyes were literally open because I started coming out of the fog that I was in from the illness. And in my case, I had been on 5 drugs at that time that were really, I look back now, in my case, these drugs were incapacitating me even more than my actual problem, right?
Right.
And I was in a really bad place. And the doctors that put me on them, the rheumatologist, did not want to take me off. And she kept saying the same thing. She kept saying, well, look at every time you try to come off of these, you get sick. That must mean that you need them. That was her answer. Wow. So I knew in those days, I just thought I got to do 2 things. I can't leave this man, at least for me, because I knew I'd have to support myself. Right. I haven't worked in 17 years. I mean, I was just like, what am I even going to do? I was petrified. But I started getting an idea. The lady that was giving me the colonics, she said to me one day, you know what, you should do this. And I was like, what? You're kidding? I'm not looking at poop. What? I don't forget it. That's never happening. So, a whole bunch of really, really cool things happened during that time because, I would kind of say it out loud to God, like, maybe I should do this thing. But I couldn't figure out, first of all, I'm on all these drugs. I'm sick. I can't do anything. I can't go anywhere in my neighborhood. I'm sick as a dog. I can't even walk. So the first thing I started doing was I started putting shoes on, soft shoes, and I would get on the trampoline that my kids had in the backyard, and I would walk around in circles. That was all the walking I could do. I'd get out of bed and walk around in circles. That was the extent, right? But I had a dream. And I was writing in this journal over and over. Every day I wrote in my journal how I'm praying, I'm asking, I want to get my health back. I'm gonna get out of this marriage, and I don't know how. And my kids at that time, I think, were 14, 15, and 16, right in there. So I started doing that. I was doing the colonics, and the only way I got money to go to the colonic lady was I babysat this little girl down the road, and my ex-husband didn't know I was doing it, and he paid me. And I took that money because I never got given any money. And I took that money, and that's how I went to her. Mm-hmm. And so after a while, I started thinking this could be my ticket out because I knew being a colon hydrotherapist, I could get hired. I mean, for those days, it was $20 an hour, and I thought I could better than going to work maybe at a corner store or something. So I called a place to get certified. I had to get certified in it first, right? Mm-hmm. So I called this school, and they were like, in those days it was $1,500. I think now it's like $6,000 to do it. But anyway, she said, well, you got to have the money by this date. And I think it was 3 months away. So I said, okay. I said, put my name in. And they only took 4 people per class.
Wow.
And I went home, and I started thinking, okay, somehow I'm going to get this money. I don't know how I'm going to get the money. I don't even know. I mean, we didn't have credit cards. We didn't believe in that. That was of the devil. I got given no money whatsoever, and I'm at home every day, and I'm thinking I got to get out. I just want to say one thing here. You know, men are kind of dumb, because had he been watching me and actually looking at me, I shaved my hair to this much on my head, and I bleached it white blonde, okay?
Oh, wow.
I'm not wearing all these frumpy dresses he makes me wear anymore. I'm wearing jeans and T-shirts, right? I'm walking around. I remember when he first saw my haircut, he just, because our daughters, everybody had to have long hair, get it? This was a big deal. And I just did it one day, and I remember him coming home from work that day, and he just did this. Oh, you cut your hair. Okay, you know what? These were lots of signs. I'm giving him lots of signs because I'm pissed. I'm really mad. I'm mad. In the early years, you're sucking up to them, and then, you know, you're scared of them because they're going to hit you and stuff. But when you start getting mad, and I always say this when people try to never show anger, anger saved my life. Because, you know, I got mad enough to say, I'm not doing this anymore. I don't know how I'm getting out yet, but I'm getting out of this, okay? So, I mean, so this person I was becoming, he just didn't know what to do with me. So he just said nothing because he could see something was changing here, right? And through the few years, I'd be like, we need counseling, we need help, we need blah, blah, blah. And he'd always like, that's of the devil. We will never do that thing.
Wow.
So, yeah, this went on and on like this. And, you know, so I ended up being angry. And that's the part I really regret for my teenagers in that one sense. Because the last couple of years I was there, I think they just remember me as just angry. I was angry all the time. Okay. You know, if you've been gaslighted and minimized and had everything projected upon long enough, you do get the point of utter anger, right? And I do believe I was in adrenal fatigue, probably in about the final phase of it by the time I was trying to get out of the marriage. So the colonics were really helping me, and they were actually helping me to function. So anyway, I just got to tell the story because it's such a miracle. I told you the lady told me I'd have the money in 3 months, right? So, you know, I'm waiting, the days are whittling down, and we're coming up to Thanksgiving and Christmas. And I had to actually have all the money in by the first week of January of the new year, because the classes were going to start right after that. And I think we were just coming into Thanksgiving. And I didn't know how it was going to happen. And one day my daughter and I went to a local mall where we live, and we went into like a Circuit City store or something. And we were coming out of the store. And in the mall, the way they have the stores is the stores are all around. Look at me, you guys. I'm nervous. Okay. I think I'm nervous. Okay.
A little bit. So I didn't notice until you pointed it out.
Okay, I'm going to say one more thing, though. It's really hot in my house right now. Okay. So I have one thing. Okay. A second thing. I'm in menopause. Okay. So anybody out there who's got hot flashes right now?
Amen.
And I'm in a hot room. And I'm a little bit nervous. So anyway, my daughter and I are walking. I do have a fan. Hang on a sec.
Okay.
Put it right on my face.
Oh, me with my battery power and.
Okay, so now I'm gonna look like
your sweaty pits, you know. Woo! Look at that.
I'm the model.
That's kind of hot. Yeah.
Anyway, so I'm with my daughter. This plays into the story. This is interesting. Sounds like it's so much drama, and there was so much drama in my life, right? So my daughter and I are in this mall. We're coming out of the store, and there's an area for the cars to drive by. Like, you know, the mall, you have the stores on the outside, and then you park in the middle.
Right.
And so when people get in their cars and they leave the parking lot, they come on this roadway. So we're walking out of Circuit City, and I'm talking to my daughter like this, and I'm looking at her, and I'm facing her face. And as I'm looking at her, I'm seeing a car coming from the other side, and it's not slowing down at all. I mean, it's driving along. It's in the parking lot, so it's maybe going 25, 30, and it's coming around, and I'm talking to her like this, and I'm like, and I push her as fast as I can. She screams at me, "What are you doing?" And she falls into the flower garden. And I jumped on the hood of the car. So I'm like, I mean, this is all drama. So, and you know, I was trying to change my life. And I'm telling you, when you really try to change your life, lots of opposition comes at you. So anyway, I'm on her hood, and it was I still remember it was a Mustang. And the later models of Mustangs, they have these long hoods on them. And I couldn't grab anything. I was just trying to stay on the hood, right? And I started rolling. And then my daughter's in her window because she didn't stop. And my daughter's screaming in this window of the car, running beside it, "Stop, stop." So finally the girl hits the brakes. I roll off and I fall down. Okay, Jill, I'm glad you're with us. And then just don't mind my blown hair, because so anyway, listen to this. I end up on the ground. Somebody calls 911. Everybody's there. And what do you think I'm thinking of as I'm laying on the ground? Okay, I had fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue, lupus, MS. All I want to do is get out of my marriage. All I want to do is go back to school. I'm laying on the ground, and all I'm saying in my head is, I am not going back to bed. I am not getting in a wheelchair. I am getting well. I'm getting out of this freaking marriage. I don't care. So I stand up, right? And these people are like, well, here's my number. Call me if you need to go to court. Like everybody was saying, you're going to sue this lady. You're going to sue her. And I had been in the case about 7 years before with my ex-husband, and we lost our shirts in it. And we lost our life in it because it was 7 years of not being able to do it. I was like, I'm not doing that. Mm-hmm. So anyway, I got to fix this. Just a little bit. So anyway, the reason I'm telling you this is this plays in this. This is the most amazing story how it all went down. So I get in my car and I'm crying, and my daughter's going, Mom, we need to call Dad. We need to call Dad. And I'm like, really? Why are we going to call him? You know, that's really, because I already knew. And he was about 2 hours out of town. He was at a job 2 hours away. So she calls him, and what does he say? Well, Adrienne, don't you have some friend you can call to get to come and help your mom? Call somebody.
Wow.
So her friend comes and picks me up. We go to the hospital and all this stuff. So the next day, I can't get out of bed in the morning, and I'm just like, I'm so sore. I didn't have any cuts, no blood, but I just had a lot of body pain, right?
I'm sure.
So I knew the mail came at 11 in the morning, and I'm on the couch in a robe. And because I was a homeschooling mom for 17 years, I never did that. When my kids all got up in the morning, I was already going. Things were happening, right? We were on schedules and everything. So I'm laying there on the couch, and they all come in. They're like, wow, what happened to you? Or, you know, and I said, well, you know, I can't move. I'm just so sore. So I see the mailman, and I say to my son, go out there and get the mail for me. And he goes out and he comes back and he puts the mail on my lap. And this is the day after the accident. And I look at this letter, and it's from Canada. And I'm not exaggerating. This really happened. And I look at the letter, and I'm like, wow, that's totally weird. Who would be writing to me? And it was barristers and solicitors. So it was lawyers from Canada. It was addressed to me. And I had no idea why. And I hadn't been back to Canada since I moved away. You know, maybe at that time it was 17 years. So I open it up, and it says, I have this uncle. Now, there's no money in my family. There's no money on my mom's side. There's no money on my dad's side. And I want to desperately get out of my marriage. I just had a car accident. I don't know how I'm going to get the money. And I got to get out, right? Mm-hmm. And that's this check. And it says, your uncle, I had these twin uncles. They were John and Henry, and they lived together all their lives. Both of them never got married. And when they died, one of them had died. He left his portion of his money to all the nieces and nephews. And so when it all got divided up, it came to me, my portion, out of nowhere. Like it just this happened that day.
Wow. So
I look at it, and I'm like, and my son goes, I'm going back out there to find me one of those, isn't it? He goes running back. He goes running down to the mailbox. Right? He's out there like, there's no more checks. I said, Cody, it's for me. What are you talking about? So anyway, I go to the bank, and I kid you not, within 3 cents, by the time I had the exchange, I went to the lady for the colonic school. I walked in. I put the cash down in front of her, and I had such a big smile. She kept staring at me going, okay, thanks for the money. Like, she was like, why are you looking like that? And I'm just like, I'm getting out of this marriage. I don't even know how I'm doing. So anyway, I got in that way. And then from there, that was my first certification. And then when you become a colon therapist, you have about 5 levels you can move up to, which I did. And I worked for her clinics. So she had 3 places. And I would just drive around to the different places. And as I'm doing that, I'm gaining confidence. And I'm thinking, oh my goodness, I can do this. I can do it. And then, oh yeah. So here's a narcissist for everybody. And we all know this, okay? My ex-husband had got me to get a line of equity on the house. Every time there was equity, he took it out for himself. Like, you know, he had implants. He went and bought a truck. You know what I mean? This is what they do. So I'm sitting there when I first want to move out, and I'm thinking, I just don't have enough money yet. And all of a sudden this little light goes off in my head, and it says, you've got a line of credit on your house that your husband is using for his like little kitty of whatever he wants to do. So I went over to the bank that day shaking. You know, whenever you've come out of abuse, you're like this. Yeah. I'm on my way to the bank, and I'm just thinking he's following me. You know, I parked my car, and I'm looking around the whole parking lot. I'm waiting for him to be there. All of it, right? And I go there and I just took 10 grand out of there. I'll never forget it.
You go,
well,
girl.
I mean, he had spent 130,000 and I took 10. And by the way, do you think that we got any improvements on our house when we got that line of credit? That was the point. No. So, but anyway, I got the money and then we moved. So I got this apartment. I paid him first and last. And my two daughters moved in with me. My son, who was the oldest, had moved out on his own. He was 19 by the time I left. And that's when it started. And that's when all I thought was I'm going to make money and do colonics. And then the lady I was working for, it was too much of a drive. It was 2 hours. So I ended up starting my own place, which was huge. And then, as you and I have talked about, and I'm sure everybody or anybody who watches this will understand this, I just started to come to the conclusion that my ex-husband was just one bad guy and I needed to get up there and meet another guy. Yeah. You know this part, right?
I know this part. Yeah.
Oh, we all know this part.
Yeah.
We all know this part.
Because we don't want to be alone.
Yeah. But I couldn't admit, I told you this before, I could not admit to myself that was it. No way. And when I happened to meet that therapist lady who said, oh, you were in abuse? How many years were you married now? Oh, almost 21. She goes, oh yeah, I've been in this field a lot of years. And usually it's about half of the amount of the marriage of time really to recover. You really shouldn't even be dating. And I'm looking at her like, are you freaking kidding me? I had this, so I felt so deprived in my marriage all those years and I just needed to get out there. Well, I successively met 5 exactly the same types of guys pretty much in a row that I dated. Over 5 years, I'd say, yeah. And then I would break up and think that's just a bad one. And I'm just waiting for that perfect one. And God's going to give me that one. Anyway, I didn't know I had PTSD at the time. And I didn't understand it until my youngest daughter moved out. And then I was really alone. And then I just felt like the dating wasn't working. And I knew there was a common denominator. I knew it couldn't have been all these guys. I thought it's got to be me. But I don't want to blame myself for it. I want to find out why, right? Right. And so that's when the discovery of the PTSD happened. I started waking up in the fetal position, sweating a lot, crying. I didn't really, this is weird, because you would think it would have been so obvious. And you know what I found out years later now? People that knew me at that time, they tell me that they saw it. They all saw it.
They usually do. They do.
I could see it.
You do.
I mean, I had a client once and he was a Vietnam vet and I actually bought him a book because I was trying to help him, as I always tried to do with everyone. And he came in one day and I was reading him parts of the book. And then I was going, oh man. And then the more I was reading it and the more I'm talking to him, I'm thinking, this is me. Like that's the first time it really started to hit me. And I just didn't realize it. And, one of the things about PTSD is that the memory of it, the fear, the actual trigger when you actually go into a flashback and stuff, it's not as the adult you are now that's in perfect control and who has the authority of their life, right? I mean, I am the child and I am the child who's got the ogre above me. And that's how it is. I mean, even my dad was dead even. I mean, that's how it repeats. And I did try to do some things like, I think it's called EMDR. I think some people talk about. Mine were so complex and there was so many layers upon layers. I just remember the lady saying to me, she kept saying in the beginning, she was kind of getting frustrated. Like, we just need one thing. Let's just have one. Because my daughter had gone to her and my daughter had had a really bad car accident. And so the lady had worked with my daughter with the car accident, right? And every time I tried to sort of start anything on PTSD, I would be led into another level of something else. Wow. And I have to say, every time I say anything, I wish I could see people that were around us because I think we all have had the same experiences, Yeah. I think that therapist was a narcissistic woman. I think back on the things that happened. I mean, the first time I tried to get a lawyer when I was getting my divorce, he was a horrible man, so much like my dad and my ex-husband. They're all around us. And I think before we're healed and before we know what it is, we might even draw them to us unintentionally, right?
Yeah, so, it seems like there's a light over our head. Oh, yeah. Their forehead. Yeah.
This one. Yeah. And this lady, this therapist lady, she ended up, oh my goodness, she kind of projected on me a lot of stuff. I mean, by the time I left her, and the only reason I think I left was I told somebody once that was in one of these groups on Facebook. This was about maybe 8 years ago. And I had told my experience. And one of the ladies on there said, you need to get away from her and you need to get out of there. Wow. And the lady told me, she goes, just because she says she does EMDR and she says she works with PTSD people, and you might have known someone that went to her, that doesn't mean, because I kept giving her all the, it's my problem, right? So yeah, and so so many experiences like that through those years, finding girlfriends around me. Like, we think we get rid of the guy. Like, I got rid of the guy, right? And then you start seeing that they're in your business, they're your friends or so-called friends you've had for 12 years or something. I mean, it started just all appearing, and the more I was seeing it, it was just all around me. And
and we talked about yesterday. We talked about the veil was off your eyes, and you know what? There's so many people that are caught up with, well, I can't break off that relationship because it's my girlfriend since we were in first grade, or that's my doctor. I can't get rid of my doctor.
Or let's switch it into religion. I can't do that because I'm a Christian and I have to love everybody.
Right.
It's, even in the churches right now, one of my biggest pet peeves is that we've got narcissism behind the pulpit. I mean, we've got it sitting beside us in the seats. And the biggest problem we have is that nobody wants to identify abuse and these things in the church. Right. And I mean, I met my ex-husband in church. I met a guy a few years ago who told me this. He said, well, I'm not a Christian, but I go there. That's where I meet women. I mean, it's kind of a, you know what I mean?
Right.
I mean, if I ever hear a guy ever in my life say to a woman, or God forbid to me, because if he says it to me, he's going to get an earful. When they say, well, I'm looking for a godly woman, I'm always like, hey, you're looking for her. I hope you find her. Oh. That is the most open-ended. You know what that really is to me? Mm-hmm. For an abuser, it's a testing question. Mm-hmm. Do you see the test? I'm looking for a godly woman, and what is that woman who's, self-love deficient and kind of struggling? What does she think when he says that? Wow, I wonder if I could be.
Yes.
I mean, I'm a Christian woman, and I. And then she would want to know maybe how he views a godly woman, and what would that be? You see, that's the test, and they all do it. They test us. They just want to see how far can I get? What if I say this? Does she think that's okay?
Right.
You and I had briefly talked about the weird sex that happens. This weird type of intensive intimacy that's not really intimacy that they do, and you're thinking to yourself, wow, I've never really had sex like this. But when you really look at it later, it's like, that was totally abnormal. I mean, that's abnormal. Hello. Yeah.
Right.
But when you're in that zone, you're like, oh, he likes it that way. Okay, I can do that. Yeah. Or you don't act like the pleaser. You act like you're just really tough. Of course, I do that one all the time. How would you like to do it? See, and these are the masks that we wear.
Right.
We have, you know what I mean? It's hard to deal with our own stuff. And if we don't really know ourselves yet, right? I mean, I'm still in the madness.
I'm thinking, if I don't do it, first of all, I'm going to get in trouble.
Yes.
Or if I don't, maybe I'm just being, because then he'd guilt me into doing it.
Oh, that's true. And you're just being a prude.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're just.
Or a bit,
that's you.
They call me the B word, or you're hurt. Yeah, I can't believe you're depriving me of, this is your wifely duties. You're supposed to be doing this.
Well, when mine was cheating with women, he would always say, like at one point, the longest stretch, we didn't have sex in 11 years by the time I left him. And one time, which at the end, I didn't want it anyway. But my point to him was, at the end was, we haven't even touched each other in 11 years. So if you understand that my ex-husband was cheating with men, right. And he didn't say what yours said, because yours wanted the sex, and he would be like, you're not doing this with me. Mm-hmm. Mine was, you offended me and you hurt my feelings. That's why I'm not having sex. So he never wanted it, but turned it all on me that it's not happening because I'm not attracted to you. You're not treating me good. And and I said, really? 11 years? You've been offended for 11 years? What? I mean, this is really what he did.
Wow.
And is everybody, to this day, his own family still, the poor guy, the poor guy. But anyway, so going forward, I became his colon therapist, and then I started to realize and see, I was on Facebook groups. Then I started going back to school. So, okay, I have to just say this, first of all, I didn't really go back to school initially to help other people. I went back to fix my own life. I had 4 autoimmune disorders, and I then got breast cancer, and they just discovered at the time that I have the breast cancer gene, which is the BRCA gene that Angelina Jolie took her breasts off for. And so all of this stuff happened at the same time that I left Dean. So I left him, and 2 weeks later, I'm sleeping on the floor of that apartment, and I've got a lump in my breast, and I'm scared, and all this is going on. And so I'm trying to get off the prescription drugs I told you that I'm on. Right. And before I left Dean, before I left him, I was actually weaning off of them on my own, and I had to figure out my own way because nobody would help me. So it took me 18 months. I never say to, if anybody asks me, first of all, I don't help anybody do it. But second of all, I would say this: never do cold turkey. Never. Never, 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 never. And I did. In the beginning, I thought I could. And I was on antidepressants, anti-anxieties. I was on muscle relaxers. I was on one more thing I can't think of. This was before Xanax. So in those days, it was Klonopin. And if you've ever read Stevie Nicks' story and read her autobiography, she will say, and you'll find out, that it was harder for her to get off of Klonopin than it ever was to get off of cocaine.
Wow.
So it was a terrible drug, and it messes with your brains. It actually messes with the GABA point of the brain. So when you have panic attacks, I mean, if you've had a regular panic attack, you also think you're going to die. But when you have it like that, it's a terrible, terrible thing. And so what I had first decided to do was go cold turkey because I wanted to get it over with fast. And I woke up one day and I was in the middle of my neighbor's garden. And all I know is that she was saying to me, it was broad daylight. She was saying, "Wendy, what are you doing here?" I didn't remember leaving my house. I didn't remember walking down the street, and I don't remember getting to her house, and I don't remember any of this. Okay.
Oh my God.
The day I went home and thought, okay, I can't do this like this.
Wow. Well, thank goodness I was there. You weren't like out.
I didn't know. So, one of the things I was trying to get off of was an antidepressant called Effexor, which the kind I was taking. It's now off the market because it was killing people. But in those days, I had a timed release capsule, and I would open the capsule and I would count all the little dots. And I just remember thinking, this will never work. There's different amount of dots in every one of these. How am I going to do it? And so I wanted to wean, and I knew I had to wean off these drugs, right? But I was going really slow. So I have to say it was 18 months, almost 2 years by the time I was off everything. And in my case, I have to be really clear. I was doing a lot of things to restore my gut health, etc. So I didn't just do this in a vacuum with nothing to really replace, what I was doing. But I'm only telling you this because the last 6 months before I left him, I was throwing up so much with the detox of it that I would put a sleeping bag beside the toilet at night because I couldn't even go to bed. It was that bad. And my ex-husband would step over me to use the toilet, and he would say, "How much longer are we going to have to put up with this kind of thing?"
Wow.
That was him, right? But in my brain, all I had was, I'm getting out. I don't know how I'm getting out yet. I don't know the way it's going to be. I have nothing. I've left my family. I've left my country. I haven't worked. Like, well, how am I even, you understand? We had moved 14 times in 12 years. And one of the things they love to do is isolate you.
Yes, they do.
And I just kept meeting friends, and he was so angry at me because we'd move to some far out place, and there I'd meet some neighbor, right? I'd be over there hanging out with the neighbor, and he'd be like, how are you meeting these people? and then when my kids were getting older, they were meeting people. So he couldn't really keep us away from people, right? Mm-hmm. So anyway, as time was going on and I got off the drugs, and then I had the breast cancer. So I went to see, my ex-husband and I had a PPO, which means I could pick my doctors. And I only had 2 more months left of the coverage because I was leaving him. And plus, you know what he did? He cut off his nose to spite his face. As soon as I left him, he quit his job. His $100,000 a year job, he quit. Wow. So all the coverages we had were going to all dry up because they all, through the union, they came with the amount of hours he worked. So in construction, you work this many hours, you get this many hours of coverage.
That's my ex.
And it was given to us in money and hours. And so I knew what I had left. And so when they did the breast cancer, I went to the doctor and he said, they did a biopsy, which, anyway, that's a whole other thing to get into. But I did a biopsy. And then at the end of the biopsy, they said, yeah, it's cancer for sure. Then they said, you have the gene and we need to give you a double mastectomy. We need to do this, 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 and this. And I said, no, I'm not doing it. And, for me at that time, I felt that I had lost so much control in my life. I'd never had control, didn't have control as a kid, didn't have any control growing up. Now, here I was, what was at the time, 46. I was thinking, I am not giving away all the doctors I had 26 doctors in 5 years during all my illnesses. And I thought all they've really done, I'm not saying they're all evil, but they had just brought me down. I had 3 major unneeded surgeries as well. And I just was done. I was done. And the guy said, well, what are you going to do? He says, this is a cancerous lump. I said, I'm going to do a lumpectomy and then I'm done. So then he said, and he was the only doctor I could get through my plan. He said, well, I'm not doing it then. If you're not going to do what I want you to do, and you're not going to do the chemo, and you're not going to do all our plan for you, I'm not doing it. And I said to him, I've got 4 autoimmune disorders. I've had over 15 years of illness. If I do chemo, I probably will die. He goes, you're just being dramatic. I said, no, I'm not. And the fact that you don't understand that, and you're the doctor, is the worst part, right? Right. So I had already said in my heart, I can't do all that because I know I'll get too sick. I'll get sicker. And then I'm supporting myself. I'm trying to leave him. I'm trying to get my own. I just thought, do the lumpectomy. He says, I'm not doing it. So I went to a friend of mine who is a doctor, and I said, he won't do it. She goes, well, you know what? I know him. Let me call him. So she calls me later. She goes, I was on a phone call with him for 3 hours. He does not like you. I said, I didn't like him either. He was a jerk. So he agreed to do the lumpectomy. I go in there for the surgery, and as they're wheeling me in and I'm laying on the thing, before I get to the anesthesiologist, I look at everybody in the room and I said, listen, if I come out of here with a double mastectomy, I'm suing every single damn one of you. And they were like, where's that anesthesiologist? Can we shut her up? I mean, because one of the things about when you come out of abuse and you're regaining your power, I was like, no. So anyway, I came out of it. And after that moment, I didn't do what he wanted. He sent me letters for weeks. You're going to die. They literally said, if you do not do what we suggest you should do, you will die. I mean, that's really how it was, really, honestly. So they just took the lump out. I tried to go forward after that, and I was pretty broken. This is when I was trying to date. I didn't want to be alone. Kept meeting the same types of guys. It was just all a sad period. But I had a really cool thing that I did at that time. I went and took a motorcycle. I actually had a boyfriend that I couldn't stand, and he had a motorcycle. And the only thing I liked about him back then was the fact that he looked hot on the bike, really.
You do, yeah.
He said to me one day, he said, you know, I used to have this girlfriend, and she's riding her own bike now. And I was like, really? Really? So it's the reason I started my page on Facebook, Menopause and Motorcycles, was because it was my metaphor. It was my metaphor for everything I was changing. Like I had no control in my life. And here I was, you know. So I went and took the course, the MSF riding course. And then after I passed, which I couldn't believe I passed. I didn't think I was going to. I didn't grow up riding. Lots of women out there, you know, you had dirt bikes and you were all riding. It wasn't me. So anyway, so I took it. And then we learned on these 400s, right? And to me, that little bike in the class was big. So after I get my license, I'm thinking, well, I really need to get a bike now. And every time I looked at them, they were so huge to me, and I was so scared. And that boyfriend, I said, you need to come with me to buy a bike. And he came with me to the place, and I remember looking at all the bikes, and I just couldn't decide. And he goes, well, that's the one right there. That one, everybody gets that one on the first time they get a bike. You know, knowing what I know today, I should have sat on it. I should have, you know, is this the bike that I want? But no. I was so self-love deficient. I said, okay, Craig, is that the one you think I should have? And I bought that stupid bike. But anyway, he drove it home. I didn't even drive it. He drives it home. He puts it in my garage. He leaves. I'm looking at it in my garage thinking, I'm scared to ride it. So a few days later, I get on it. And I'm going around my neighborhood in this double cul-de-sac, right? I'm in first gear. And if you ride a motorcycle, it's like you're barely moving, okay? I'm in first. And I'm going around in circles. And I'm so scared, I can't even put it into second. And all I'm thinking is I'm going to die. Because when you have PTSD, everything is you're going to die. I'm telling you. Whether you're thinking a tree is going to fall on you when you're driving or whatever, I'm going to die. So I'm driving like this, and I come to the stop sign, and I tipped right over, and I smashed. I smashed the mirror off my brand new bike.
Oh, no.
My mirror, it was broken. And so I'm on the ground, and I'm trying to pick it up, and then there's this guy across the street, and he's coming over. He's like, can I help you? I'm like, no. I pick up the mirror, and I stuff it in my pocket, and I get on the bike, and I put it back in first, and I go on. So listen to this. 2 weeks later, I'm sitting at a light, and I'm on my way to work, and I'm just talking out loud.
Are you going first?
I'm saying out loud to myself, I got to do something about this bike. And I really want to ride it, but I'm too scared. Right. And right in front of me, I kid you not, right in front of me, the light is red. I'm like staring, waiting. I'm the first car. This lady on her motorcycle goes riding past the other way, right in front of me. And she's got this big smile on her face. She's about my age. She's alone on her bike. It was the same sort of style of bike as mine. And I just like this. I was like this.
Wow.
And I watched her and I felt like my eyes were just like glued on it, right? And that was it. That was it. I went home after that day of work and I was like, I'm riding now. I don't care what I got to do. And I took it out. I went up and down. There's a place near me that's a boat launch. And you have to go up a mountainside to come down to the lake. And I would ride it up and ride it down and ride it up and ride it down. And I did that for maybe a month. I mean, I went into all these little parking lots and I would go around the parking lot. And I called old boyfriends that I hated, but I said, hey, come and help me ride this bike. And they thought they were going to get something. Like, I'm done with you. But I want to learn how to ride a bike. So that's all I kept doing, right? And then I started gaining confidence. And then when that happened, I got rid of that bike. I got a bigger bike. And then I started traveling. And I did like the Grand Canyon by myself. I did a lot. And I know that sounds like I don't have PTSD, but I have this weird dichotomy in me. And I'm sure there's you and others that we're all alike in this way. When we're in the moment of the PTSD and when we're in the moment of what I now call smoke and mirrors, you're debilitated, right?
Yeah.
But every now and then there's that other person that lives in you. And when she comes out, she's just a blast.
She is. She's awesome.
And she's really strong and she does things. And she's just that girl. I mean, you're looking at her like, look at that. That's me. But then I would flip, I'd flip right back into the other one too.
Right.
So, but anyway, so I did the Grand Canyon on a really good daytime. And I actually took a little video on my phone. So I got the whole thing that I recorded. It was kind of fun. So I did have those good times, but then I had the horrible, and I am a melancholy personality type. That is my type. If I allow myself to go into thinking about my life, because I've got no contact with my adult kids who are, well, my son is just like his dad. I'm pretty sure I have my own views on what I think it is. I also think it is inherited. I know people don't. I know that the person that you're having next week, I read her thing and it said how to not allow your child to become narcissist or something.
Right.
And what bothers me about people that say that type of thing is I know how my son was raised. And he wasn't allowed to become narcissistic. Right? I mean, there's sometimes when people say things that I think they really don't get it, because I'm not saying she doesn't know her stuff, but my son was raised with discipline. He wasn't treated in a narcissistic way. He wasn't, all the things that they do when they say a child's raised like that. And my ex-husband's mother did do that to him, but I never did that. And Dean, their dad, was really never that much around. So I look at my son now, and I do have to say, with his grandparents on both sides being sociopathic narcissists, and with his father being one, and I don't know. I just wonder about genetics. I wonder about brains. I wonder about how the brain is, and that's just my thought. But anyway,
they say it's a cycle. If you see it in your family, that it is a cycle.
Well, I know with certain brain scans that they do know that they can see the brain of a psychopath and they can see the brain of a sociopath, and these ones, because they're different. And I don't know if they're born that way or it becomes that way, but I do believe that it is something, and it's something that's there. I think Christians like to say, well, no, that can't be true, because everybody has, can be, humble, and everybody has a chance to whatever they say. And I always think, well, it also talks about people that are reprobate. I don't know if people become reprobate or whatever, but if you ever want to do a really good study of the Old Testament and see a narcissist, just study the King Saul. Just study King Saul. From the minute that Samuel anoints him, just watch, just read. I mean, it's so classic. It's so clear. You cannot miss it there. Right. But that's beside the point. So anyway, so I'm starting to see it in my family. I'm starting to see it around friends. Going back to school in my own sort of business life, I'm doing well. I've now been doing it about 17 years, and really in a rural community where I'm working in the trenches more rather than working for a doctor or being in a sort of a big city where you got a lot of inflow of. I'm kind of rural with country folk, right? So it's more like when you work with people, you also know them. So right. That's kind of what I've been doing. And I like it because working as a coach with them, I'm not just saying, hey, go do this and see you sometime. When they do start doing the work that they do, I'm actually alongside them as they do it. And I'm actually working alongside the diet that they're on. And I get to see their colonics, and I get to work with them to see their recovery. And so I can tweak it, and we can make changes as they recover.
That's awesome.
So that's all one side. That's the business side. But that whole family side, my ex-husband, who, by the way, when I left him and I moved out, he met this lady 5 months later, and he married her within 7 months. Same thing he did to me. And I remember when he met her, and I said to him privately, Dean, it's about guys for you. I mean, what are you doing with a woman, right? Oh, Wendy, that was a blip on the screen when I did that with you. I'm thinking a blip. How many blips are blips? Your whole life, right? So anyway, so he married her and she had kids. And so from the moment that he married her, my kids did not actually talk or see to him for 11 years.
Wow.
Until this lady is divorcing him a year or two ago, and he's all best buddies now with our kids. And the sick thing is that my kids all listen to him. They're so excited. Dad, you know? And I'm like, so now I'm the bad guy. And a lot of times I've read that happens a lot when we finally leave, that they actually turn on the mother, and it could be a guy, but I think in more cases it's the mom or the person that was the one that was there for them.
And that's my older son. I don't see him.
Yeah, that's mine too.
Brief visitation, and then it was gone because he had to go back to dad. So
right.
So no, I get it.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and my son, I recently shared a meme that said something like, the fastest way to get in a relationship with a narcissist is when he needs a home or something, somewhere to live. He needs somewhere to live. Yeah, my own son does that. And he travels with a great big black garbage bag with all his stuff in it. And he meets the next one and he just moves on in.
That's sad.
And the thing is, he's a good looking guy. He's young, and that's going to work for a while. And, of course, I don't want to say that he's not helpable. I think he could be, but he's now 34. He's been like that a long time. Mm-hmm. And he doesn't seem to have a conscience at all. And he's living in a conscienceless life, doing a lot of things. And he's abusive to females. So, and I had to go no contact with him in 2013 because he got really in my face. Plus, he uses steroids at the gym. And, when they do the big muscles and they get rages. Mm-hmm. So he's taking steroids. So he just became a person I don't know. And I live alone and I really didn't feel safe the last time I saw him. Okay. And so that was all kind of a sad thing. It's all was really sad. And I used to cry every day. Honestly, I cried every single day. I told someone once, I think I cried for 2 years. Because, when you leave the ex-husband, when you finally get out of that, you're thinking, when you're never thinking it's going to be your kids. How honestly, no. Do you think that? Nobody. No,
I never did. I initially left with all three, and then for that to have to give him back. Well, he went to kill me. My son did. Oh. So I had my attorney. I'm on the phone with my attorney, and my attorney's like, "You give him back. Just give him back to dad because I can't guarantee your safety." Yeah. He's hearing what's going on, and he just happened, by the grace of God, he happened to be on the phone during this, and he gave him back. Yes, but it's all my fault. It's all my fault, apparently. Yes,
it'll always be. I mean, the biggest sign, people would say that to me occasionally, like, actually, I'm estranged from all three of my kids now for very good reasons. But if someone said to me, well, what would ever have to happen for you guys to be in each other's life? And I guess if I was to only ever say one thing, I think that victim, when everything's the other person's fault, that would be my biggest sign. It would have to be that they're not in that mode, right? That whole victim. It's all, if I ever saw them take accountability, take responsibility, and be different in a consistent manner, probably would be my biggest sign. It wouldn't be texting me or, no, I'd have to see, you know what I mean? That expression, like, you should walk around with your own body chalk because you're always the victim.
No, but that's awesome. That's a narcissist. Yeah.
And, they never get well. My son can't get off drugs and alcohol because he's a poor victim, right? And all narcissists are also victims. It's never their fault. They're never the villain.
Right.
So that's, to me, one of the very biggest signs. But I think when you meet them, and I met so many now, especially through all those dating years, I haven't dated now in 10 years, but when I was doing all that, in the beginning, they don't reveal a lot of that. They're listening to you have verbal diarrhea. And the more you pour out your life, the more they quietly sit there and take it all in. I mean, that for them, that's what they're looking for.
Exactly.
Yeah. But then later, it all changes, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So being alone for you, because I know that a lot of women and men, because men can be abused too, a lot of people struggle with this because they're fresh out of this relationship. And of course, the first thought is, yes, I need that prince or that princess to rescue me. I need that person in my life. I need. And you don't. Right. So what advice would you give someone that is having those thoughts that maybe a week out or maybe 6 months or a year that they've been out of this relationship and they still feel that need? What advice do you give that person?
I mean, that's really soon. 6 months to a year out, almost everybody's. Yeah, that's when it comes in because That's when it's going to be the strongest. And I think that was the hardest period for me. I mean, now I look back and I didn't know why I just want to say a couple things. Number one, I really believe that we all, most people have kind of a whole, I even think healthy people raised in healthy families, you have to kind of find yourself in life. You know, most people do. Even like I said, good families, they have to get to the point where they move out on their own. They become sufficient people. They become independent, maybe. And for a lot of healthier people, maybe when they meet the person that they marry, they have already been their own individual first, right? I would think a healthy person probably. So a healthy man has, obviously men in my generation already were more independent. So the guy's already doing his own thing. But a healthy woman, maybe she would have already become her own individual. I think what I see, now there is always the exception because some women who are really self-love deficient are really good in business and they make a lot of money, but this other side is still completely undeveloped and they have a big hole and they need to fill that void. So it doesn't always have to be a woman who's not working and not looking like she's made her own individuality. But I would say without fail, when we need someone right away, and I could say this as a blanket statement and somebody might get mad out there, but if we are honest with ourselves and we look at it, it's usually because we have got to find out, first of all, what happened with us in our lives. It doesn't have to be, I had family of origin stuff, but it doesn't always even have to be that. It can just be, you know, what had just happened to you. But there has to be a coming to grips with exactly what happened. Right. And then there's an authenticity that has to come in about, because this is the big deal I have, and I say it a lot on my Menopause and Motorcycles page. How can you know what you're looking for if you're looking for a relationship, if you don't truly know who you really are, right?
Right.
So there's words that are bandied around a lot today. And there was words like, oh, boundaries, you need boundaries. And so people will read books on boundaries, right? And so they're like, okay, well, yeah, I need boundaries. Well, so I want to give a theory here. How can you theoretically go out there and make yourself boundaries when you don't know who you are?
Right.
What do you like? What kind of guy do you even like? Do you even want a guy? Maybe you really don't want a guy. Do you want to travel? Right? What kind of work do you like? What's your purpose in life? There's so many questions. They're all out there. So if you're going to create boundaries and you're going to have them in your life, not just with men, but with people you meet, it would be really wise to know why I have my boundaries and why I want them. Somebody else's boundaries can't be your boundaries. Now, there's a generalization of boundaries that we all can have. Okay, we don't want someone coming in and abusing us, you know, when someone's swearing at us, that's not good. All of those are generalized. But when it gets down to the very specific boundaries that you want to have in your life, it's got to go back to your authenticity. And most of us, especially our older generation, we didn't get to really be authentic. We got married young, we had children. Now we're raising children. Now we're doing all these things and everything's about everybody else. And you hit your 40s and 50s and you're like, I'm done, right? And that's when women almost seem angry. They're not really angry. They're just put up with so much crap for so long. And they're so almost defensive about people saying, oh, aren't you being selfish now? It's not selfish. It's really coming to grips with who am I and what do I want?
Right. Well, even if you're not coming out of a toxic relationship,
yes,
it's nice to discover, okay, the kids are gone. Who am I?
Right. So, okay, staying in that vein, let's just stay with that because that's really positive. You know, you're authentic. Who are you? I'm building my life. And women, way more than men at 40 and 50, can turn over a brand new life and do something brand new. Men generally don't do that like women do. Right. Okay, staying in that vein, there we are. Do you want to bring dating in there? If you do want to bring dating in there and you feel you need to have a man through that time of your authenticity and finding out who you are, I have a few questions for you. The first one is, do you want to give yourself up to somebody right away? Because you will end up doing the things that he wants. And yes, you might do things that you want to do too, but it's now going to be away from the focus being on you. Who are you? Now, when I was really in that self-deficient sort of love mode, I didn't want to know who I was because I was scared of finding out who I was. I was scared of being alone. And I hated the thought of being alone for the quote unquote rest of my life. Because by the way, it never comes in with just being alone for a little while. It only comes in flashing lights saying you're going to be alone for the rest of your life. Yeah. You better do this now. Right? You still got some looks going on. Get out there and find someone. So there's this real panic on the inside. Like I just, so maybe if I just get the guy in there, then I can do the other things I want. But in what I see as a practitioner and what I've seen in my own life is you lose yourself in that process. So that would be my first question to you. If you really feel that you really don't want to be single, to ask yourself some hard questions. If you look at your future, and I asked you this already, Melinda, the other day, I said, I ask people this all the time. How do you picture yourself in your older years? Do you picture yourself in a recliner, sitting beside your guy on drugs, prescription drugs? Probably sitting there. Now you might, I want to say to anybody out there who is sick and who is like that. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about, because I've been sick. I know what it is to be sick. But if you're going to be somebody's nurse and you're going to be sitting beside him, you're going to probably give up your life to him. You're probably going to be his nurse. And especially if you meet him later in life, you're probably going to be looking after him. If you think that's me sounding selfish, I want to say, had I stayed married to my husband over years and had he gotten sick, I would have looked after him. But am I going to go into it now? No. So what do you want? Think about what you want, because things don't always go. And I want to say a final thing, whether you believe in karma, whether you believe in whatever you believe in, if this guy that you meet later in life has got a lot of karma coming back to him, you're in it.
Amen.
And you're going to be living that. And that can be his grown kids. That can be anything. And personally, I started to understand, was the weirdest thing, when I started to actually starting to enjoy being single. I still had a lot of bad days, but I was liking it more. The way I got to it now being 10 years is that as all I really had to ever do was think about and cause myself to, because when you're lonely for a guy, you only remember good stuff. But what I started to do was make myself remember all the times that I was with somebody and they were drinking, they were hitting me, they were screaming at me, they were in the house when I didn't want. Let's not even say abuse. Let's just say I wanted to read a book. I just wanted to have my own time, my own life, my own. And I really started to think, okay, you can have somebody. Let's look at what that is. What is that? Well, I want the best of both worlds. I'll just go out to a movie with them. I'll go hiking with them, but I keep my own house. That's how it's going to be. Right? But that even got me all off track and all in this whole drama. That was the final thing too. I didn't want any more drama. I have such peace. I mean, my house is peaceful. I have dog rescues. I have 4 dogs I rescued. I have such a peaceful life. It's really a sanctuary almost in here, right? And I'm thinking, I'm bringing somebody else into that. So the questions I would say again about singleness is, have you gotten to the place as a single person where your life is really, really good and comfortable? If you are there, truly there, and you still feel that you really need somebody, and you're not doing it out of desperation, you're not doing it out of escaping whatever's in your life. You might have money, you might be rich, you might have lots of things, but you can't live in your own head.
Right.
So whatever it may be that you have to conquer, that you might be looking to another person to give you, or even to distract you from, couldn't we even say that isn't that kind of a bad thing to do to anybody? If I'm not getting myself straight, and if I am not 100%, and I feel like I have to have someone so that it's easier for me because I have all my problems, really, I'm not correcting my problems for that person, am I?
Right.
And I'm actually going in there, well, they're going to complete me. No. And finally speaking, we usually attract exactly what we are.
Right.
So if you don't do the work and you're going to sit there later going, I don't know why I just keep getting these same people. It's because we get kind of what we are. And I also want to say one more thing. You did not bring on your abuse. You did not bring on the abuser. You didn't get them because of that's what you are. I don't mean that. Right. I mean, if you do not do the inner work to actually meet a very healthy, relationship-minded person, you will not know what you're looking for. Because if your own understanding of relationships is broken and you don't know what healthy is, then you won't know the difference if somebody is healthy, right?
Right.
And you might know all the signs of a sociopath, all the signs of a psychopath, all the signs of a narcissist, and you're so hyper aware of that you're on it. But would you really know what was healthy and happy and good, right? Do we even know what happy is? Because I didn't know what happy was.
No, I didn't either.
I didn't have something to even gauge that.
Right. So like myself, you grew up in that as a child.
Right.
You know what normal was. I had no idea what normal was. Yeah.
And one thing, I'd like to ask you a question, and anybody who listens to this out there, because this is interesting. And especially since you said the kind of guy your guy was. Mm-hmm. Did he have a sense of humor? Could he ever laugh? Could he ever enjoy or be happy? Ever?
If it was something directed at me.
Okay, so let's clear that up. I'll say that better. Could he ever just be truly happy in a moment of enjoying something that didn't include mocking someone else or laughing or hurting someone else, but in truly the way that normal people did? Could he?
No. Nope. No.
They can't. They can't.
No.
Never.
Mm-mm.
And the old days, I used to say to myself, well, he's just serious-minded. No. They don't laugh. They don't. We say, from what we came out of, we didn't even know what joy was. We didn't know how to be happy. But these guys, they don't, not only do they not know it, they're going to stamp it out and bomb it. You know, how dare anybody even have, I remember Christmas would come. And first of all, my ex-husband wouldn't even let us have a tree. That was of the devil. And I used to sneak the presents, and I'd sneak them and hide them so that I could bring them out for the kids myself. I mean, everything was so joyless. It was so, we could never be happy. Someone's birthday or anything, you know, it was just, I look back now and it was heartless. It was really just heartless how he was, right?
And I'm sure you were on eggshells during that holiday and the birthdays. You just waited because something's going to happen.
And that's what's funny. When I finally left him, I remember years later, somebody said to me, so what was the final straw? Like what was the final thing he did?
I get that a lot.
And I go, oh, it was Christmas. And he lined up all the booze in the fridge. And I knew he was off work again for 6 weeks. And I took one look at that. And after years of this, that was just it. Like, isn't that weird? It was like I'd already been through it for years. But that year, done. Done. I never looked back. When people say things like, well, I just can't help it. I keep going back to my ex. You know, we just have sex. I'm like, what? I mean, when I got out, it was like, I cannot imagine going back to that. Could you? Okay, now I got to clear up a few things here. We're not talking about PTSD, being broken and being in this abused place where you don't know yourself and so you're scared to go away. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about happily, willfully being in a good place and going back to them.
No way. No way. Now, see, mine, where yours was at, it was bisexual. And he was also he was also an addict. He was also a sex addict. So it had to be 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I had to be on. So it was a lot different. Yep. But I would not want to go back to that. He was into BDSM. Yeah. So, I mean, he was into all this sadomasochism.
Well, actually, once we all started, when I started talking like this in my own head, like we're talking, and I started to realize a lot of this, this was kind of like incrementally how I really realized I didn't want to date anymore. I mean, I really started to come into myself and my own feelings. Oh, because, you and I were going to quickly talk about being numb. So when we come out of abuse, and especially like when you've talked to a person or you are talking to somebody who's in abuse and they're talking about it and you're listening to them and you're thinking about how horrible what they're saying is. Right. And we're almost talking like they're in the third person, or they're just talking and you're thinking, like they're not realizing, really. Right. Well, when you're desensitized to it and you're in it, you will quite often even say about other people, oh, they have it worse than me, because you've been in this place so long. So this is the big angry, where I get really passionately angry when people say you have to forgive. You have to forgive. Oh, don't even get me. I get on a soapbox about that one. So, I grew up in abuse. I married abuse. And then I've got all these well-meaning people saying that, not just Christians, everybody says it. The Buddhists say it, everybody says it, doesn't matter. Oh, it's like holding, what's that one? It's like holding coals in your hand, burning yourself, all these things. And I'm always reading them. And then the other one's like, well, you know what? You're never going to go on in your life. And I'm thinking, oh. So, here's the big thing. I always ask people this question. When you were in your abuse, and especially when you very first got out of it, would you agree with me that one of the very hardest things about it all is having no validation and no closure from the person that gave you the abuse, right?
Right.
They don't admit, they never admit it. And even if you never want to be with them again in your whole life, still if there was an acknowledgement somewhere of what they have done. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, I know. But you won't get that.
Right. So do you understand that when you tell people that they have to forgive what you're doing, not you, I mean people that do this, right. Do you understand what people are doing? You're actually technically saying to a person who just came out of abuse the very same thing. You're not going to have any time here to even find out who you are, what you feel, anything. You don't get to acknowledge your own feelings. So you don't even get to validate yourself. You don't even get to come to that point. You don't even get to do nothing. You just have to forgive. You're denying them even their own validation of their pain. You're even in telling them to forgive, you're asking them to jump over that whole part and then again say, I forgive, and still never feel your pain. You already didn't feel your pain for all those years they abused you, and all those years that you were saying, it's okay, and life goes on, and nothing ever changes, and you become numb.
Right.
You have been numb for years. And then you have people telling you to forgive. That's heaping more crap upon more crap. You first have to feel. And it may take you 5 years. It may make you 10 years. It may take you your whole life. And you may still never come to the point where you can actually even understand what you're doing to forgive.
Well, right? I even went through this ritual where I wrote a letter and I tore it, burned it. I said the words out loud. And we talked about this yesterday. I said the words because I know that's what I'm supposed to say. And I keep taking it back because he does something that still ticks me off.
Yeah.
And so it's like, I don't know if I've ever had that.
Right. And I think that's the mistake. I mean, in my opinion, that's the mistake. And I think the mistake is thinking that there's going to be a feeling, there's going to be a time, there's going to be a something that you're going to know. I think the best that we can do, and again, if there are Christians watching, you could do a study of the Bible, and it is interesting in Hebrews where the Lord talks about how he did not go to or seek the fallen angels for reconciliation. God himself says that. Is that interesting? Because it seems to me that if we're all supposed to go out and forgive, well, let's go out there and get Satan and all his minions then, and let's just go and forgive them all. You start seeing how this whole thing doesn't add up.
Right.
Well, if you don't forgive, God's not going to forgive. Really? What happened at the cross? Really? Because if Jesus said it was finished, I think it's finished. Oh, but he's going to judge you. Really? Because that's legalism and that's a religious spirit, and I rebuke that. And by the way, I'm not going around in my life living thinking about all these people. I love them all. I even pray for my ex-husband, but quite honestly, I couldn't care less if I ever saw him again. And if you ask me if I totally forgiven him, I don't know. Some days I think I have. Some days I haven't. But I'm certainly not walking around beating myself up because it's a continuation of the exact same crap we've already lived in, right?
Right.
Now we've got more projection on us. Oh, you're not forgiving. And look at you. You took it back. I saw that, Melinda. You took it back. You're not really forgiving him. And you see how this whole thing stays in that same.
Oh yeah. And if you are a Christian, you are supposed to be this people view you as good Christian.
I don't even think that's biblical. I really don't. I don't think it's even. I don't see it. I think it's something that's taught.
Right.
I think it's something that's taken out of context. I think it's said. I think there's a lot of stuff. I think way too many people have gone back to abusers because of terrible things like that. Terrible. And because my ex-husband was a religious sociopath, he would use that. Like, you're not, you're supposed to forgive me. All the things they say, right? I mean, they know how to use the whole thing.
Yes, they do.
I mean, the first year after I left him, I'm sure there were people that, had I said I was a believer, they would have thought that I was utterly lying, because I learned something in that first year after I left him. I learned that if I swore, not the Lord's name, I mean F word especially, if I used it, he was less like, because he had this amazing presence, and he would always be, in the hierarchy of churches. He was always involved. He was always on the chairman people. So I just learned this amazing thing. And then whenever he was around, I'd be like, yeah, that effing neighbor over there across the street, that effing, and I'm just like talking, and I just and I just became, and he was like, and that was it. He never spoke to me again. And I was like, this is great. This is great. This is absolutely fantastic. And the church that I was in that he went back to them. She left me for no reason. Mm-hmm. So the whole thing just snowballed, and I just became this. I was the one. That's okay. After a while, when you just want to get out bad enough, I don't care what they all say. Right. I don't even care anymore what my adult kids are saying. And I'm not even hating them. But the whole forgiveness thing, and on my pages that I have run, and the menopause and motorcycle page, even, I'm like, if someone, they put it in there really incognito. It's this thing like, well, I've done it for me, and it sure did make my life better. When I started forgiving. And I'm like, and so what I do with them is I go, that's interesting. I haven't. And I just leave it there. And if I have to, I do it on purpose so that they will sit there and get all flummoxed. Oh, what do you mean? You can't. I can sew.
Yeah.
And I don't have hot coals. And my life's going great. And I'm going back to school and I'm happy. I'm not really feeling like I'm under a lot of judgment here. Mm-hmm. And it's not like drinking hot acid, whatever all those little things are. It's all about control. It's all about control. I'm telling you, it's all about control.
And we talked about that. Oh, and the anger. We didn't talk about the anger.
Anger.
Talked a little bit about.
You know those 5 stages. What are they?
We talked about the
grief.
Grief. I just did a video on this. The grief.
Yeah. Anyway,
God.
I don't think they're linear. I don't think you just go through them once. I think you go all over the place. And every one of us all of our personalities are different. Everybody's different. For me, I had to find the anger. The anger for me was the thing that drove me. It really drove. It was my best friend. Mm-hmm. And it got me off my butt. It got me doing things. Someday we should talk about how I got the money out of my ex-husband because.
Oh yeah, we have to talk about that. Yeah.
Well, and it was alimony, and I was told by many lawyers, you'll never see alimony. Mm-hmm. You know, if this was child care or child whatever money, you know, maybe you could go retroactive, but you're never going to get that.
Wow.
And I got it. I got all of it. And if I could have been a fly on the wall in the home that he was living in and with the new wife, because he didn't tell her a thing and he never told her about the money he owed me.
Wow.
And when I got that lawyer and the lawyer said, well, he's getting paid under the table now. You're never going to get money out of him. And then the lawyer said to me, he goes, how long has he been married to this lady? And I said, well, at that time it was almost 10 years. And he goes, you think that he's on her title of her house? And I said, no, this lady, she owned the house before he married her. Why would she do that? And he said, because they never change their spots. These guys, this is what they do. Right. And he had done it to me with our house and he did it with the equity. So I said, you know what? You might be right. He said, so I'm going to find out who's on the house. So my ex-husband had married her and moved into her house. And we found out that my ex-husband was on the title.
Oh my God.
And we both sat there, me and the lawyer, with these big Cheshire cat grins on our face. And he said, we're putting a lien on the house. Woo! And then he warned me. He said, you're going to have in about 6 to 8 weeks, they're going to get the notice in the mail. And I was like, okay. For 11 years, I had tried to get a hold of him. For 11 years, when our son got the DUI, all the issues that I was left alone with our kids when he remarried her. And he had never returned a call. I'd never been able to get him. I could never get a text. The kids couldn't even get him, right?
Wow. And
the day they got that lien, he called and left a message on my machine. Hey, Wendy, how are ya? He's all on my answering machine going, we're playing phone tag. Hi.
That's my youngest. It's Calvin.
Hi, Calvin. What a cutie. Cutie.
Wow, that's awesome.
Well, anyway, so I was able to do it. And the reason I was I had the divorce judgment. The decree of the divorce for anybody is really a judgment. And he had signed that he would pay me $700 a month, which was nothing at the time. And then he had just walked away from it, right? So my youngest daughter had been 16. He had given me the alimony and child money until she turned 18, and then he disappeared. So he took me back to court 2 years after that to try to get rid of the alimony altogether. And he thought he was going to win. And he came in with a cane. And he walked up to the judge with his cane. And he said, I had a car accident and I can't pay her. And the judge was just looking at the tax statements from him and his wife. And she said, I don't really care what you're doing right now, but you're going to pay her. And the reason I tell you that is that was the years before. So I actually had 2 judgments. I had the divorce judgment. And then I had the judgment when he took me back and he lost. Wow. And that judge said, and when he lost the second time, she said, you will also pay her legal bills that you brought her back to court. Oh. Well, he just disappeared. So he left me with a $5,000 legal fee. And then he left me, he didn't give me anything. So all those years later, which was 2013, when we did the lien, mm-hmm. The best part was I told my lawyer, I said, I don't care how much more money I have to pay you out of whatever I get, but you're going to tell him that if he calls me one more time, we're going to hit him with harassment. Ooh. I never talked to him once. I didn't text. I didn't talk. He never heard my voice. He never talked to me. Never. I never gave him anything, right? Mm-hmm. We took every single penny of that equity out of her house. Now, I would have felt sorry for her had she not had 10 years with my ex-husband of never talking to our children, treating them like crap, and doing everything she did. By this point in time, I was like, I don't care. So the money came. Well, by the time I paid off all the debt that he had left me with and everything else, I didn't have much left. But the point was, I got the money. What was interesting was he couldn't believe that I did it. He had narcissists, sociopaths, and they really believe they're so much smarter than everybody else. And plus, when they're the abuser to us, they really think we're so useless. We would never do anything. We would never, you know. Every time I drove to my lawyer's office in those days, I played Helen Reddy, I Am Woman, that song. I think I sang it 15 times on the way there, and I sang it 15 times on the way back, and I sang it. At my office, I had stuff written, stickies. Every time I heard something about some great person that got the right kind of vengeance, I would put it out there. I mean, and when the first offer that they gave us was less than a quarter of the amount that he owed me.
Wow.
And I remember in my little codependent heart going, I should take this. I should take it. It's money, right? It's something. Right. And I told the lawyer that I would think about it. And that night, again, my anger was my best friend. And it came in and it said, how fucking dare he? How dare he? And I started thinking about all the things. And I made myself think again about all the things that he had not done just to me, but to his kids. And I called him. I told my lawyer the next day, I said, nope, I want all of it. I want every penny of this. And I got it.
Woo!
But guess what? When the new wife, or so-called new wife, found out about all this, because she didn't know that he even took me back to court, and she didn't even know he lost. She didn't know anything. So when she lost all her equity to me, I wish I was a fly on the wall, because she left him right after that. So it's too bad. I just really feel sorry for him. I feel so sorry for him. And you know, all I'm doing is stalking him and just hunting him down. This is what he says to people. She just won't leave me alone. She just. And so you know what? He's living in a fifth wheel on the back 40 acres of some guy's property, looking after his sheep or whatever he's doing, looking after his property, sitting back there. Poor guy. He's just got nothing, and everybody's just done him wrong.
Yeah.
Poor guy. Poor guy. Yeah. I love it.
That's usual. Yeah.
I love it. I don't hate him. I just like watching it all happen. You know, there's a really good old expression. Let's see if I can remember it. It says, the wheels of God grind slowly, but they grind exceedingly small.
Ooh. Ooh, I like that.
Isn't that good?
That's good stuff.
Yeah. See, we're always so concerned with never having vengeance, and vengeance is mine, says the Lord. No, I'm enjoying every little bit that God's doing. I'm enjoying it all. Every day he has an opportunity. Every day he has an opportunity to turn it around. Every day, every single day.
Right. They do.
It's not my fault.
Right. You're right.
Yeah. And the best part, you guys, is we all got lessons and we all got an education. And it's the best education in the world. You'll never be that innocent anymore. And you might miss that person occasionally. But honestly, this is far better to be. Far, far, far better. Mm-hmm. It really is. There's sadness in it. There's growth in it. There's hard things in it. But I would never go back to that person I was before. Never, never, never. And I'm certainly not arrived. I don't want to say I'm arrived. But I would never go back to where I was. And I struggle. I have bad days. But never again. Right?
That is awesome. That really, and to make that revelation of when you know, you just know, no, I'm never going back.
Yeah, never.
And
then on top of that, to get through that 5 years and realize that if I ever did have a man again, he would truly have to be a partner, and he would have had to have done inner work, and he would have to be a healthy man. Mm-hmm. Now, a lot of women will say to me, well, a healthy man means a lot of things. He's not a narcissist. And okay, I will say this. He might not be a disordered person, but he has to have done some inner work. Hello, ladies.
Right.
Like, hello. Everybody's so concerned with it. Well, he's not a narcissist. Well, yeah, you're looking after him like he's your kid or whatever. Like this is bad. I mean, for someone to do inner work, that means that they are, they're a mature individual who's walking in their own individuality. They're not completing you. You're not completing him. You are individuals who are both together. being fully involved in yourself, who you are. I mean, most of the people that are saying, I can't be single, it's been a year, what am I going to do? I would just have to say that to you. You really need to become full faceted in who you are so that you can be and know what that is to be with someone else who is, right?
Right.
And so my girlfriend says, well, then, Wendy, that's like being struck by lightning. Like, you just go out there and get struck by lightning. You think you're going to meet someone like that. And I said, well, that's why you have to be really happy if you don't, because I am really happy. And I don't care if I don't. It's okay if I did, but it's okay if I don't. And that's okay. That's a good place.
And see, that's a good thing. If somebody's watching or they're watching a replay later and they get anything out of this, it's just that it's okay to be alone. Now,
and let's go a step further as older women.
Okay.
Even if you're happily married, even if you haven't been through abuse, even if you're just with a guy you've been in love all your lives, one of you may die before the other. If you do not do the work that you need to do as an older individual, as you age, and I live very close to a retirement community here. And over the last 20 years almost of the business I'm in, I've had the opportunity to talk to a lot of elderly people and ask the ones who are happy why they are and ask the ones who aren't. And I'd love to tell you that the ones that are happy are because they have intact families and their kids come visit them. That's not it. The ones who are happy, the people who get old who are happy, have created integrated lives. They have what's called community. They go to get their hair cut from the same lady. They have made friends with people in the neighborhood. They go and they play bridge. They go over to the senior center. They do things. They are integrated people. They have chosen integration outside of a marriage, outside of a lot of things. I believe getting well after abuse includes becoming an integrated individual. You're not just looking for another relationship, good guy or bad guy. You're looking for something bigger. You're looking for an integration with society, with community, and something that's going to take you into old age as a happy individual. Like every weekend I go over here to my neighbors, they're all farmers, and I play dominoes with them, you know, and they're all married. I'm the only single person, and there's a bunch of people, but I like it. And I like these people, and I have learned to enjoy people now. I'm not just in the drama of relationships, and I can only be with one person. And, you know, this whole integration thing is really part of healing. It's really part of getting well. And I really believe that if we do get the, you know, the honor really of aging and living to an old age, I choose to be integrated and happy in an old age person's body, right? I'm 60 now, but in 20 years, I'm 80. And I'm going to go out happy. I'm not going to be going out sitting there, well, I haven't talked to my kids in 30 years and they don't care about me. I've seen that so many times, and I've just had to live since 2013 with no involvement with my adult kids. And the first 2 years, I cried every single day. And I blame myself for what went wrong. What is it? I lay in bed at night trying to figure out why my kids are being like this. You know, in that book by Sherry McGregor called Done with the Crying, great book. Read that book.
Okay.
And she really gets into this. Like, you are losing your own life. And again, that's where my anger kicked in. Like, get up off your butt and build your life. And it's not going to be a man. It's not going to be, for me anyway, a romantic thing. I want an integrated, happy with business, with friends, with community. That's why I'm not moving around. Like, people are like, you can move to another state. Well, I've built something here. Right. You know, I have built something. And as you age, when you age and you stay around what you've built, you know people. And that's, for when you get older, this is what's important. People used to be on farms and they all, like, look at the Amish people, right? The Amish, they get together to build a barn. Right. They get together to do their canning. They get together. And yes, they could have their individual lives, but there's a coming together, right? Right. And the times that we live in, you can sit at home and be on your computer. You can watch Netflix. You never have to even go outside your door, right? We can order food to us from Amazon. We can, you know, we can stay very individualized. And we don't need a lot of other people. And what we're forgetting is that that's what keeps us happy. Right. You know, that's what's keeping us not just going to your job every day. There needs to be an integration. And when that integration happens, that opens up parts of you. Right? Right. I mean, there, in a way, this is going to offend people, but in a way, when you don't do that, there's a real, I believe with, instead of saying codependency, and if I was to say self-love deficit, for people who stay there, there's a real laziness there. And that's where people get mad at me or offended. There's a laziness, right?
Well, do you think there's some fear?
I want to stay kind of in what I know. I want to meet another guy so I can bury myself into him again so that we have no life outside of ourselves. other than your kids.
Do you think it's a lazy thing, or do you think some of that's fear?
It's a mix. There's fear. There's definitely fear, but there's a laziness of, I'm talking for myself and maybe from all the 12-step groups I've been in, but there's this weird thing. It's almost a rebellious laziness that I don't want to do that. I just want to meet another guy and I just want to get together with him. And I just want to, and I know that sounds really black and white, but it's just like this weird, almost maybe it's a spiritual battle. I don't know, but it's this fight. You have to fight through that thing that all it wants to do is go over here and have somebody look after me again, another guy or another whatever, right? Whatever it is. Or you can be a woman who just has a close girlfriend that you want your friends to look after you. It doesn't have to be a guy. Right. But what happens to this autonomy and this integration is you're choosing to actually build that. And, not everybody is active physically and can do a lot of things, but you can do some things.
Right.
Right. I mean, I just think we do this thing and especially people with abuse because we don't like it. I don't know. I PTSD problems in my past. I didn't want to be with people. I don't want to be in a group of a bunch of people. I don't like people. But I don't trust anybody and I'm hyper vigilant and I'm looking around the entire room the whole time and I'm noticing every little thing. So I don't really like being with people anyway. So it's hard to integrate yourself when you got PTSD, right? It's hard. But there's little things. There's so many integral parts that are small that you can build on. Like that person that cuts your hair every time you go. There's always things you're doing and you're doing them all the time, right? Right. That thing. And everybody can integrate to some level with those things and you can start building them. What if you're sick and you can only do it on the computer? You do it online, you meet people. You integrate. Right. Because I don't know what's going to happen. There's a lot of us baby boomers out there, a lot of us. And there's an awful lot of single older women these days, tons of us. And what are we all planning on doing as we age and get older? I mean, what are we all looking for? Can't just be a guy. Right. Really? Are we gonna just sit and say that to each other that at some level that and I'm not mocking this person that's thinking that, please don't think that. I'm thinking if it's really a guy, let's just go over that for a minute. Okay. You're 60, you're 50, you're going to meet a guy now. Do you really think he doesn't have a lot of health problems by now? Because guys die sooner than women. It's true. Well, okay, so let's just play devil's advocate and say you want to be his nurse. Okay. What kind of life is that going to be for you? Is that a life you want? Well, I'll have my bills paid and he's going to pay the rent because he's going to have what's going to be dual income. I'm not going to have to worry about any of that. Really? Because you could go do that with other ways, right? And then clear up another thing. You think you're going to have this great sex, 50 and older? I'd say even 40. Man. And especially as a health practitioner, I'm telling you right now, when they've got prostate issues, when they got diabetic issues, this thing is not happening so much no more. And if you want to go out there and get a pill for that, that has its own problems. Oh yeah, that's scary. Yeah, that's awful. And that happened to me. That's horrible. Right. So whatever people are thinking, there's an element to all of this where again we come back to authenticity and knowing yourself. What do you want? What do you really want? You know how many women I know that are with guys that they hate, and not even married to them. I'm even just saying boyfriends and girlfriends. And I finally asked them, "Why are you with this guy?" And they even say to me, "I can't stand him." And I'm like, well, what are you even doing this for? What is this? Like really? Well, I get a lot of the answer. Well, I don't want to be alone, or if I leave him, I have nowhere else to go. I have no job. Who want me because I have these kids? So again, let's go worst case scenario. Let's just go worst case scenario. What's that going to be? You might have to get an apartment. You might have to live with someone else. You might have to go back to school. Maybe you want to do something else with your life. There's so many bazillions of opportunities, really. There's tons of them. And it's good stuff. Right. But the problem is especially when we're scared, we're in this. And most of that is smoke and mirrors. Because as soon as you start taking steps, man, it's like, whoa, this is great. Things are changing here. So anyway, I've said too much. I'm blabbing. No. Oh, there we are. Oh, that's Opa. Right. So look at that. That's okay. Just anybody who's watching, Melinda saw me the other morning. I forgot that I was supposed to be on here with her. And so I had sat straight up in bed because we were going to do it at 8 in the morning. And I actually had a late night because I was on a late phone call. And so I got up late and I sat up in bed and I thought, there's something I'm supposed to do. And I was like, and I went flying over to my computer and I pulled it up. And I mean, it was really, I had not even looked in the mirror yet. And I was like, oh, here I am. And then I saw myself.
she looked gorgeous. She's just,
I don't know. When I saw myself, I just about fell off the chair.
You look gorgeous.
I kept saying, "You're not taping this, are you?" Because it was bad.
She looked dynamite.
Right. Well, you know what? We have to do another one some point and talk about the health issues like adrenal glands and right. Restoring the gut. You know, people always talk about the adrenal glands, and quite often now when we're all talking, that's just terrible. I really am that shallow. You know, we all talk about. I get lots of things
sometimes too.
Yeah, so. Stuff. On Facebook, everybody's talking about the adrenal glands, you know, because of the cortisol. But as a health practitioner, there's really so much more, and especially the gut and the gut lining. So there's something called SIBO and SIFO. So SIBO is small intestine bacterial overgrowth, and SIFO is small intestine fungal overgrowth. So when that cortisol is all over the place and the adrenals are going nuts all the years that we're in fight or flight, other things happen. So it's not only our steroidal pathways, but bugs, imbalances, lots of hormones flying around. Candida is a fungus. It's like thrush on the tongue, only it lives in our guts. That will just, when you're under constant stress, man, Candida yeast problems grow like gas on a fire. And so when people start becoming really, their gut is really overgrown with all these bugs, especially yeast and Candida, oh my goodness, emotional fragility, the inability to think, the inability to, I mean, you're incapacitated emotionally and mentally. So there's so many aspects of recovery. And because I was so personally so far gone with breast cancer and the 4 autoimmune disorders, and my recovery was really from the base, because I didn't have, I mean, the time I left my ex-husband, I was getting out of bed maybe 2 hours a day.
Wow.
And I had been laid up for about probably 5 years, and I had no energy at all. So my health recovery just for me was huge. And I will say not having him in my life was a huge thing, because once he was out of my life for 6 months, yeah, I was getting better by the day. Right.
And
but
you know,
I had to recover the gut. I had so many, you know, if you think your small intestine is 23 feet long, your bowel is 5 feet. So if you're imagining almost 30 feet mouth to anus, and you can imagine all the problems that can really take over in there. So I had been chronically constipated. Well, one of the things that stress does, especially living under stress all the time, is it usually goes one of 2 ways. You're either going to get chronic diarrhea and problems with IBS, or you're going to be really constipated. And it's interesting that 1 in 4 women who get breast cancer are constipated. Actually, it might be 1 in 3 now. But so, and just as a colon therapist, I want to say to people that constipation is not going, I mean, if you have 1 poop every morning, you are constipated. So people think, oh, well, I go every day. I'm not. Really, 3 times a day would be normal, and it would be after you eat. So I just say that to tell people, most people I've worked with for 17 years as a colon hydrotherapist are constipated. Now, another thing to think about is your colon wall, all of your veins and arteries attached to it. So if that colon is backed up and it's full of waste, you are doing something called auto-intoxication, which means all of this poison sitting in the bowel with all the veins and blood attached to it is being poisoned, your blood. So that's like the soil to a plant. And you're really in a very sick state, right? And then most of the time, people under a lot of stress, we're not eating good because we're eating when we're stressed. We don't want to eat certain things. So there's a lot of things that are at play, and they all end up over time creating a situation. And my entire body, head to toe, I can really say that truthfully. I had something wrong everywhere, and it was just to cover. But like we're saying, when the abuser's gone and when you're away from all that, there was an amazing recovery that was starting to happen. And then there was a lot of things I did after that to totally regain my health. And I will say I've been cancer-free since 2004. And I do have the breast cancer gene, and I did not do chemo. I did not do radiation. All I had was a lumpectomy. And I just want to say that there are ways to get well. I'm not saying everybody has to do it my way, but I like to, every now and then I go back to that doctor's office who said I was going to die. And the last time I went, I was 10 years cancer-free, and I went back and I visited the receptionist, and he said, well, technically speaking, because you have the cancer gene, you're not cured. You never can be cured. He said, you're actually in remission. I said, really? So it's been 10 years, so I can never be cured. He goes, no, you have the gene. I said, wow, that's just like the saddest thing I think I've ever heard in my whole life. Yeah, that's what he said. And he said, what are your symptoms? I said, symptoms? I don't have any symptoms. So they can't believe it. They don't want to believe it. There's something called epigenetics. So there's genetics, and then there's epigenetics. And that simply means that you might have been born with all the bullets in a gun, but they don't have to fire because your lifestyle and your choices do not allow that to happen. Now, when I was married to Dean and I was under that extreme stress and I was getting sicker and sicker, my genetic code may have very well come into play, right? I was sick, I was depleted, I was getting sicker. When I got out of the environment and I did, other things as well, those things that had fallen into place, they were no longer in place. And epigenetics simply means that the body does not follow those genetic pathways, but finds other ways to actually grow in, and the body doesn't have to go there, right? So it's kind of cool. I've often thought of genetics almost as a bit of a fallback, like your body will do that in the worst case scenario, but it doesn't have to. And that's the problem I have with all the genetic testing now, because people are telling me all the time, every day at work, well, this is my genetic and this is what I have. And I'm always like, that's not always true, right? And there's great books. If anybody wants to buy a book called Deep Nutrition, it's written by, her name is, I can't forget, Shanahan is her last name, but she was, the last 5 years, she's been the nutritionist and the doctor for the LA Lakers.
Oh, wow.
And she wrote a book, Deep Nutrition, and it's all about epigenetics and restoring and not letting your body follow the actual code, genetic code that you inherited. Amazing lady. She's on podcasts everywhere. If you ever find her, she's great. Okay. But I'm a living, walking proof of the fact that my genetic code has not been able to been activated to take me out, right?
Right. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That is awesome. Wow. Yeah, well, we'll have to talk more about that because I need to talk to you about Lyme disease because I have chronic Lyme. So we'll have to talk about that another time.
Yes. Woo! Yeah, I have some important views on that. Anyway, for a Lyme, look into ozone therapy. Remember, I was telling you about it before.
Yeah, you were telling me about that,
right? Great therapy. Yeah, right. So great for Lyme. The people I know that have Lyme, and they start using it regularly. Big difference.
Oh my goodness. Well, girl, we are coming up on 2 hours.
Yeah, we got to go. Anyway, I really enjoyed it, and
good. Me too.
We'll just have to
again.
I don't know if anybody has stuck with us through this whole thing, but I'm hoping that people will watch it on once it's recorded.
Yes, I hope so too. I hope so too. So I'm going to just say thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much, Melinda.
Thank you. And you stay with me for a few minutes, but we're going to sign off. Thank you all for watching. We appreciate that. If you have any questions or concerns, by all means, please, if you haven't jotted down her information here on the screen, these banners, you can also shoot me a message later. I'm happy to provide you with that, but I think I'll put that in the description a little bit later on, all of your links too. So people can come and visit you if they have the health questions too, or even maybe if they just want to talk to you a little bit more about your story, by all means, you can visit her page. Yes. So we're going to sign off. Thank you all. I love you. You guys have a great night. Bye.
Bye.